The effects section is great. One of my favorite ones are these Morpheus effects. What's up, bros? Welcome to Tech Tuesday. Today we are finally tackling the highly requested review of Pioneer DJ's DDJ-1000 SRT. This has been a long overdue review. It's been 2 years in the making. You see, the original version of the DDJ-1000 was actually released 2 years ago, back in 2018 during NAMM. And when I saw this thing, I knew I had to have it.
Man, that is some next level stuff. I have not been excited about a piece of software, a piece of technology like that for a long time. That is a game changer.
Unfortunately, the original version of this controller was only released for Rekordbox. Ever since the introduction of Rekordbox, the relationship between Serato and Pioneer has just not been the same. So when Pioneer put this particular controller out, they knew exactly what they were doing. For many years, the Nexus system has been Pioneer's flagship line. This essentially mirrors that exact same system, pretty much blow for blow. Pioneer right off the bat knew they hit gold with this controller. Many of us, myself included, were waiting for a controller of this caliber to come out. And when it finally did, unfortunately, it was only for Rekordbox. It took another full year for Pioneer to finally come around and finally release the Serato version of it. And for people like me, that was a godsend. And this controller has actually been out for almost a year now. This was released last summer, but I finally pulled the trigger on it. I finally went out and bought myself the controller, and man, I have been loving it. So let's take a closer look at Pioneer DJ's DDJ-1000 SRT. Let's start by taking a look at the rear of this controller. You of course have your standard XLR, RCA, and booth 1/4 inch outputs. This controller also features 4 line and 2 phono level inputs for plugging in external devices such as turntables. This is a crucial feature because it is not a standalone controller, so it's awesome being able to plug in external devices with those inputs. A big selling feature of this controller is the 2 USB outputs for easy DJ transitions. Moving on to our microphone inputs, you have a combo XLR jack as well as a 1/4 inch jack, a power button, and lastly our 12-volt input connection. These are the cables that it comes with. I don't like the fact that it is not an IEC. It does need a power brick. Not a fan of that. That's kind of amateurish. I would love to see an IEC, especially on a piece like this that's geared more towards pros. I would definitely say that this is a pro piece. So here it is, the DDJ-1000 and all its glory. And let's talk about the biggest focal point when it comes to this controller, the jog wheels. The jog wheels are definitely why you buy this thing, or at least if you're me, especially for somebody that's coming from a Nexus system like myself. The jog wheels was a compromise that I was not willing to do. One of my biggest gripes with DJ controllers in the past has always been the size of the jog wheel. I've always been a fan of large CDJ style jog wheels, and the fact that this is actually here on a controller of this size is incredible. Now the size and portability is great and all, but you have to remember that this does want to mirror a full Nexus system, meaning the full CDJs, the 900 mixer, and another CDJ on the left hand side. And the compromise that you're making is that they had to cram in a lot into a small form factor, and that's actually one of the biggest gripes that I have with this thing. I wish that it was just a little bit bigger. One of my biggest gripes, especially with Pioneer, is that they've been making their controllers smaller and smaller and smaller, and I'm one of those people who don't necessarily want a super small controller. I'm totally fine with this size. However, anything smaller would just be a little bit too tight. A lot of what we do is muscle memory, and because I'm coming from a Nexus system, I've sometimes found myself overreaching to hit the play button or to trigger these effects buttons. I can't can't tell you how many times the first couple of days with this controller I inadvertently stopped the incoming track as opposed to triggering the effect button just because this is so cramped. If you take a look at my thumb, it's very tight in here. Again, it's awesome having something that mirrors a Nexus system in this form factor, but I do wish that it was just a tad bit bigger. Mixer section on this controller is great. I feel right at home coming from the 900 system. Again, it does feel a little bit cramped, but everything is right where you would expect it to be. The only thing that you are missing is the tap, which I do kind of miss. I really enjoyed tapping to the beat to make sure that my effects are on beat, and also because I do a lot of Latin songs, sometimes Serato doesn't do a very good job of analyzing the tracks, so I do miss having the tap function on the mixer. Again, that's something that you can do internally on Serato, but I do miss having a dedicated button that I can just tap to the beat to. Not a deal breaker, but something that I will miss. The effects section is great. One of my favorite ones being are these Morpheus effects. I love that little effect, and you do have two different versions of it. Here's the other one. This one is more of a sinking one, and this one is more of a raising one. I do also love the color effects on the controller, my favorite one being noise and filter. Cool thing is that you can also layer these effects, so you can have color going and you can have your beat effects going. So you can do something really cool like turning on a transform effect, hitting that noise, and then triggering it like so. It sounds just like you're scratching. Check this out. And of course you can always do that manually. Very cool effect indeed. Love that. Now, a couple of things with the crossfader. I will say it does feel a little bit heavy. It's not as light as I would like it to be. It definitely feels heavy in hand. Also, it is worth mentioning that you cannot adjust the crossfader curve on the actual controller itself. It can only be done within Serato. And that's a bit of a disappointment. It would be awesome to have a crossfader curve adjustment knob so that you can adjust on the fly and not have to go into Serato. Again, this is a one-time fix. If you've already used this controller, it'll save your preferences on Serato. Moving to our decks, you'll feel right at home if you've ever used CDJs at a nightclub or something. If I go ahead and load up a track, you can adjust the tension of the jog wheel, whether you want it super light or super heavy. I will say the tension adjustment on the jog wheel isn't as great as it is on the CDJs. I feel a very slight difference from all the way heavy and from all the way light. Screen on your jog wheel is great. It's easy on the eyes. At a glance, you can tell what BPM you're at, and it changes with the pitch fader, so that is awesome. And you can also view how wide you have your pitch fader. Because I do a lot of Latin music, I like having my pitch fader nice and wide, and I love the fact that it's a full size pitch fader. Dialing in the exact BPM is nice, easy, and super precise. The play and cue button feel just like a Nexus system. They're super responsive, super tight. I love the feel. Now, something that you don't have on the Nexus system are these awesome 16 performance pads. They're multifunction. You, of course, have hot cues. I love that. You also have a roll. Slicer, which I'm honestly not sure if anybody actually uses Slicer or what the hell it's for, but you do have Slicer. And of course you have your sampler, which I love.
DJ Bar.
I love the sampler, and if you love using sound effects like myself, you'll love being able to have volume controls of your sampler. I love being able to manipulate the intensity of the sound effects with this volume knob. So for example, if I have a siren going, and I'm just like, all right, let's get out of this. I can just fade out myself. And you could also toggle between pages of your sound effects, which is something that I love. And if I go back, same thing here. And if I go back, so that is awesome. You have full access to all your samplers within Serato. I love that portion of this controller. Now, something that I don't love and I hands down have to just totally crap on it is the looping section on this controller. The looping section on this controller absolutely blows. To trigger a 4-beat loop, you'll obviously press the button, but then if you want to extend that loop, you have to hold the shift and you have to hold out to extend it to the size you want. Everybody I know uses the standard 4, 8, 16, 32. That's what everybody uses. I don't know why we need in and out. I wish they would have flipped this and had the in and out opposite. You can MIDI map these on Serato to work the way you would like it to work. However, sometimes Serato will just forget that I remap these buttons, and it gets very frustrating having to remap it over and over again. And that's pretty much it as far as this controller is concerned. So I've been playing around with this controller for about 3 weeks now, and honestly speaking, coming from the Nexus system, I have not missed it at all. I feel right at home on here, and I feel like I did not make that many sacrifices. My biggest gripe with this controller is that it's just a little bit too small in my opinion. I wish it was just a tad bit bigger, and also that power connection, it kind of bothers me that it's not a dedicated IEC plug. But that's all minor stuff and stuff that I can forgive because it's got so much going for it. I love the jog wheels. The jog wheels are honestly the selling point on this. I feel right at home, feels just like I'm using a CDJ. The performance pads, man, I love them. They're full color, they're bright, they pop, they're super responsive, and man, I have been banging these things hard and they've been holding up. The mixer is just as good as the 900 in my opinion. The effects are great. I will say the effects are not as harsh as the 900, which is something that I actually do like. I like my effects a little bit more subtle. Some people may not like that. And also I do have to state that one of the biggest complaints that people had about this controller was the fact that you could not trigger Serato effects directly from it. And secondly, those Serato effects aren't post fader. To me, that wasn't a big deal breaker for me because honestly speaking, I don't use Serato effects all that much. However, that may be something to consider if you are a big user of the built-in dedicated Serato effects. If, however, you don't use any of these Serato effects, then it's totally fine. For me, it was no problem. I was so used to using my Nexus system. Having the effects built in on the mixer, in my opinion, is just way better. Now, with all that being said, I can't deny it. I love this thing. I have been having so much fun with this controller. I love it. It's so light. It's so portable. It's nothing like I was used to before this. All I've ever owned were turntables or CDJs. So something as light and as portable as this without sacrificing any of the features that I know and love is awesome to have. So I'm gonna go ahead and say it. I highly recommend the DDJ-1000 SRT. I really have enjoyed mixing and playing around with this thing. It has its quirks, but it's an all-around awesome controller, and I hope that in the future they address some of those issues that I do have. Thank you, bro, so much for watching this video. Hopefully you guys found it informative. If you enjoyed it, please be sure to hit that like button, subscribe if you're new around here, and if you really want to help me out, don't forget to turn on that bell so that you can be notified next time we do another controller review video. Let me know what controller you'd like me to review next down in the comments of this video. Lastly, don't forget that if you'd like to support my channel, you can do so by buying a piece of merch or by downloading my DJ sound effects. The links are all in the description of this video, as well as purchase links where you can buy this controller. Big shout out to Canal Sound Alike for hooking me up with a great deal on this controller, and I'll see y'all next time. Peace!